Draymond Green in the past couple months very quickly has ascended to one of the biggest voices in media. And as a current day player, he is very critical of the quote-unquote old media. Guys like Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, Nick Wright, as well as many others. Draymond Green has absolutely no problem calling them out for their terrible and awful takes. So with that being the case, in today's video, we're going to call the man himself, that being Draymond Green, for his awful takes and quite literally expose him. And the first take I do want to look at involves Steph Curry and his ISO scoring ability.
Teams have figured us out, and I personally don't think at that point Steph Curry had figured out I'm going to get a bucket whenever I want to. I don't think he was capable of that yet. We got to a point where we needed to be able to give someone the ball that can just go get a bucket. And Kevin was already there. I don't think Steph was there yet.
So right there, Draymond is pretty straightforward, saying Steph Curry couldn't get a bucket like Kevin Durant, and implying he wasn't an all-time great ISO player. Now, one thing I do want to point out in that clip, Draymond gave no stats, no data, no factual information to back up his points. As looking at Steph this year in 2022, he was arguably the best ISO player in the entire NBA. And looking at the stats among qualifiers on ISO scoring, Steph Curry was first in points per possession, second in field percentage, and first in effective field percentage. And when it came to the entire NBA, he was in the top 4% of all ISO scorers. And one thing I do have to point out, compared to Kevin Durant, he was ahead of him in every single category. And unfortunately for us, ISO scoring stats only go back to 2016, which is 1 year before Kevin Durant joined Steph in Golden State. But even with that being said, looking at that year, Steph Curry then was an elite ISO player, being second in points per possession, fourth in field percentage, first in effective field percentage, and among the top 6% of all ISO scorers. And Draymond did say one key thing, that Kevin Durant was already there when he arrived in Golden State, compared to Steph Curry, who was not there when he paired with KD. But looking back at the 2016 playoffs, looking at Steph versus KD as ISO scorers, Steph Curry once again beats him in every category, this time by a pretty wide margin. Looking at points on average, field percentage, as well as effective field percentage. And the most jarring thing I did find in the 2016 playoffs, Steph Curry was in the top 5% of ISO scorers, compared to Kevin Durant, who was in the bottom 20%, a full 70 points below Steph Curry. So breaking down both KD and Steph as ISO players, I think at the very least, Steph's on his level, and you could argue he's a better ISO player than Kevin Durant. And of course you guys saw Draymond was way off on this take. And staying with Kevin Durant, next up, we have another take from Draymond involving KD versus Carmelo as overall scorers.
Carmelo or Durant, in their prime, who was the better scorer? Scorer only.
Ooh. I'm going to go with Melo. And the reason I'm going to go with Melo is because I grew up watching Melo score the basketball. You wanted mid-post work? First step, crazy. You wanted straight block work? Fade away tough. And Melo will bully the hell out of somebody. You want the tray ball? We all know he can do that. He's just a three-point shooter for the USA team.
Now, looking at that clip right there, Draymond, his first major point was based in nostalgia instead of objective facts. Also, he says Carmelo can score from anywhere in the basketball court. In the post, the mid-range, the three, he can score anywhere and everywhere. And while that is true, that same logic applies to Kevin Durant even more so.
The reason I'm going to go with Melo is actually this in specific. We were playing against him at the Garden. It had to be my first or second year in the league. And Melo caught the ball in the post. He faced up on me, put his shoulder into my chest. I may have fouled him a little bit, maybe not. And he went through my chest, and I got the stop. He missed. Come back down. He did the exact same move the next play and made the referee call a foul. And the reason why that's such a big deal to me is because as a scorer, you go into slumps, you have bad shooting nights. And the one thing that breaks score slumps can be a free throw. And just knowing that Melo could get to the free throw line like that, that's why I'm going to pick Melo.
Now, this argument right here, Draymond, he definitely lost me. As saying Carmelo Anthony is a better scorer, purely because of free throws, is terrible and ill-founded logic. As going down that line of thinking, you might as well say James Harden is the best scorer in NBA history, as back in Houston, he would get 20 free throws easy on a nightly basis. Drawing fouls, baiting the refs, I wouldn't say it's against the rules, but in a debate of who's the better overall scorer, that one factor really doesn't sway me. As comparing both Carmelo and KD at their 10-year apex, Kevin Durant is severely outclassing him in virtually every category. He averages more points, he has more scoring titles, shoots better from the field, better from 3, better from the line, has a higher true shooting percentage, effective field percentage, shoots better from the mid-range, averages more in the playoffs, as was the NBA Finals. Any way you want to slice it, KD is the better overall scorer compared to Carmelo. And Draymond's overall argument, if you want to call that, has no factual basis and isn't grounded in reality. As once saying, Carmelo, in nearly every category, is inferior to Kevin Durant. Now, looking past Kevin Durant, we have his former teammate, that being Russell Westbrook, and Draymond Green's thoughts on him being traded from the LA Lakers.
The reality is, I'm not sure Russell Westbrook gets traded. I don't, if I'm guessing just as an NBA fan, I don't really foresee it happening, nor do I think it really should happen. You haven't really had the opportunity to see that team healthy and how they could grow together healthy. And I also don't like how Russell Westbrook gets all of the blame for everything going wrong. Like, there's just...
So, right off the bat, let's make one thing very clear. Last year's Lakers team was one of, if not the biggest failures of all time, with Westbrook, AD, and LeBron leading the way. And speaking of those three, when they actually played together, their overall record was only 11-10. And if you dive deeper, only 5 of those wins were versus actual playoff teams. And out of that 5, only 2 were impressive, as the other 3 were versus injured teams without their superstars. Even looking past that, just watching the games, you know Russell Westbrook does not fit on this team. I wouldn't say it's his fault per se, but him on this roster makes absolutely no sense. And I do find it pretty comical Draymond tells the Lakers to just run it back and be healthy, when that right there is the major problem, as Anthony Davis in the past 2 years has missed 51% of games, compared to LeBron, who's missed 42%. This Lakers team's biggest problem is age as well as staying healthy. And on top of that, looking at last year, in 3-point shooting, they were 22nd, in turnovers, they were 5th, rebounding, they were 18th, and defensive rating, they were 21st. So what do you have right here as a team who can't shoot, they turn the ball over, they can't rebound, they're awful on defense, and they're old and injury prone. That right there for any team is a recipe for disaster as well as failure. And once again, looking at Westbrook, it's like putting a square peg in a round hole, as the Lakers very recently said they want Westbrook to be a spot-up shooter, shooting in the corners. I don't know if that's fake news, fake reporting, I don't know what that is, but whoever came up with that is an absolute dunce, as Westbrook last year, stats-wise, was one of the worst jump shooters in the entire NBA. Out of 65 players who took at least 500 jumpers, Russell Westbrook ranked 64th, only behind Julius Randle. And looking at shooting in the paint, it was even worse, as among qualifiers, which there were 54, Russell Westbrook ranked 53rd, only ahead of RJ Barrett. And look, for the Lakers next year, their best player is LeBron James, who's going to be 38, their second best player is Anthony Davis, Mr. Glass, and Russell Westbrook is their third, who couldn't put a beach ball in the ocean. If you believe in that team, I applaud you for being loyal to your Lakers squad, as the rest of us will be laughing and cheering them on in the play-in tournament. And staying in LA, next up, we have Draymond Green talking about Kyle Kuzma as well as Brandon Ingram and their fit from the 2020 Lakers.
the thing that people don't realize is when you make decisions like that, and so some people who don't understand winning,
Right.
and basketball to a certain extent, but definitely don't understand winning will say, oh man, but Brandon Ingram has been an all-star.
Right.
So that was the wrong move.
Right.
But if you understand winning, what I say is, but they won a championship.
Right.
And so regardless of what your thoughts could be on that topic, they won a championship. And that automatically trumps everything.
Now, talking to you guys, the viewer, I think all of us know, looking at championship teams, fit definitely matters. You can't just have 5 guys who are all score first players, put them on a team, and expect to win a championship. No one thinks that, and it simply wouldn't work. On every championship team, you need your Andrew Wiggins, your Marcus Smart, your Tristan Thompson, the role players who get dirty and play defense. Now, with that being said, looking at the Lakers, Draymond in this regard misses the boat, looking at Ingram as well as Kuzma. As back in 2019, the Lakers, it was LeBron James and a bunch of children. And in order to get Anthony Davis, the Pelicans needed assets that were valuable and had a high ceiling. Something in Brandon Ingram they definitely got. Compared to Kuzma, who was already an older player and reached his peak by year 2. And looking at Ingram after being traded from the Pelicans, he averaged 24 games on 39% shooting from 3 at age 22 and made the All-Star game.
I'm not sure that team still wins if they keep BI over you because of the skill sets. Like, all of these pieces have to fit in.
Have to.
And what you brought to that team, you were like, you and KCP were the shooters.
Now, let's get one thing very, very clear. Looking at Kyle Kuzma, he's a decent NBA player. In the 2020 playoffs, en route to the championship, he averaged 10 points on 31% shooting from 3 while playing average defense. And looking at the Lakers team, he was in the top 5 defensive weapon, as LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Danny Green, Caruso, as well as Dwight Howard were all much better defensive players. And actually, Kyle Kuzma was the only rotation player with a negative defensive plus-minus. And at the end of that clip, Draymond Green called Kyle Kuzma a sniper from 3. As once again in that playoff run, he shot 31% from deep. Out of the rotation players, that was the second worst behind Alex Caruso. Markieff Morris, Rajon Rondo, KCP, LeBron James, Danny Green, even Anthony Davis all shot better from deep. Draymond's overall point in what he's saying, in theory, is right. But looking at Kyle Kuzma and Brandon Ingram, you don't think Ingram could average 10 points, play average defense, and shoot 30% from 3. That on a bad night for Brandon Ingram is happening 24/7. On a good night, he's giving you 20 on 40% from deep. The Lakers with him in 2020 would have been unstoppable and even more dominant than they actually were. And in 2022, quite possibly be contending for championships. Now, that right there is my final point and the end of the video, and our last bad Draymond take. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time.